Hey brother! Jay, for a long time it seemed to be like a super common thought that Shrek was a Disney movie. And it totally makes sense. I mean, after all, there is
Cinderella. I'm a real boy. Snow White.
And not to mention that super catchy parody on It's a Small World.
Please keep up on the grass, shine your shoes, wipe your face.
Psh, face doesn't rhyme with grass. Can't believe they didn't notice that. But Jay, we have talked on this channel before about how it always seems just so coincidental that the same movie frequently is coming out from two different studios at the same time. Of course, there was Ants and A Bug's Life, Finding Nemo and Shark Tale, and The Emperor's New Groove and The Road to El Dorado. And some people might tell you that Monsters, Inc. and Shrek was just another incident of exactly this. And to an extent, I can kind of see where you would make that connection. Both of them kind of present as scary creatures, but at the core of it are just warm-hearted souls. But that comparison's not quite right. It's not really Shrek versus Monsters, Inc. Instead, it's more like Shrek versus all of Disney. Shrek came out in 2001, but to fully understand how Shrek is taking on all of Disney, we have to go all the way back to 1979 and to, of all things, Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Yeah, that's really the title. They included the words, The Motion Picture. Welcome to Shrek vs. Disney, the YouTube video. A video on YouTube. And I'm your host, Ben Carlin, from the Department of Redundancy Department to take you on this journey. Star Trek: The Motion Picture, though, is significant because it is the first movie that is to be produced by Jeffrey Katzenberg at Paramount Pictures. Now, you may remember Jeffrey from a few of our other videos. Jeffrey Katzenberg, and it did, against all odds, and its own title, way better than expected, which is to say that it brought in $80 million on a budget of $45 million. So, profit. But the original budget for the movie was $18 million, and Jeffrey Katzenberg convinced the studio executives to increase it to $45. And guess who that studio executive was? Michael Eisner. On this channel, we have also talked about Michael Eisner before.
Michael Eisner?
Michael Eisner? Yes, that Michael Eisner, future chairman and CEO of the Walt Disney Company. That motion picture, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, was the beginning of the relationship between Katzenberg and Eisner. A true force in the history of Disney, Paramount, and really just movies for like a 20-year span. With these two, Paramount churned out all kinds of classics, including Airplane, Raiders of the Lost Ark, An Officer and a Gentleman, and Flashdance. And meanwhile, over at Disney, Walt, of course, himself had died back in 1966, and the animation department had kind of been struggling ever since. This time period is politely known as the Disney Bronze Age, and less politely known as the Disney Dark Age. Thankfully, Disney made a few changes and had a couple of aces up its sleeve, including John Musker and Ron Clements. Those are the guys behind Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, and Moana. But their first hit, The Great Mouse Detective, came just in time and literally saved the animation department from bankruptcy. Full video by clicking the card. Disney then hired on Michael Eisner as chairman and CEO, who then immediately turned around and hired Katzenberg. Katzenberg would post up as chairman of the animation studio, and what a difference this made. He made his mark almost immediately with the production of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which raked in $330 million at the box office, and even today has 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. But the real magic started just a few years later with the Disney Renaissance. We had The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and the big one, The Lion King. Everything looked to be going amazing until Eisner's number two, Frank Wells, died in a helicopter accident, and the obvious person to fill his position seemed to be Katzenberg. He had clearly proven himself over the past 20 years of working together and had even started showing interest in the position prior to Wells's accident. And who knows what the Disney company would look like today if Eisner had just made this one promotion, but instead, he made his own worst enemy. This all went down in 1994, and just 6 months after being denied the promotion, Katzenberg left Disney to start his own company, and maybe you've heard of it, Dreamworks. The parting was not a happy one. There were lawsuits over the severance package that lasted up to 5 years. And at one point, Eisner used the words little midget to describe Katzenberg. Not super great. Katzenberg wasted no time in producing controversy, with his first film coming out in 1998, Ants. And immediately accusations started flying because of course Pixar would have just released A Bug's Life just a month earlier, full video by clicking the card. But really it was in 2001 when Katzenberg would make his big splash with the movie that would take the world by storm, Shrek. Shrek's popularity is kind of hard to describe, but I probably don't have to. If you were born after 2001, there is just simply no way that you've avoided this character. There have been 4 full-length feature films, a spin-off movie featuring Puss in Boots, a book, a Broadway musical, and theme park rides. And just the films alone have brought in $3.5 billion at the box office. Also, raise your hand if this was the movie all of your teachers showed in class when you had nothing else to do. Yep, thought so. All of you. Or at least I hope all of you, or else I'm gonna feel kind of old. What is it about this movie that made it just so popular? Well, kind of a lot. I mean, first of all, the voice cast is amazing. The music is all super catchy and more based on pop culture and less on original songs. And the story is somehow super unique and the story you've come to know and love all at the same time. Really, it was just a breath of fresh air that took everything you thought you knew about fairy tales and just rubbed swamp farts all over it. Hashtag swamp farts. I really can't stress to you enough just how happy it makes me that we found another way to use this hashtag. Like, who thought it had so many uses? So the question is, why is it that you came to expect certain things in a fairy tale movie in the first place? The answer is Disney. Which means really what Shrek is doing is rubbing swamp farts all over all of Disney in a perfectly veiled and entertaining fashion. The more layers of this onion or cake or parfait or whatever you prefer you peel back, the more entertaining it gets.
You know what else everybody like? Parfait.
Right out of the gate, they are making jabs at Disney with Shrek reading aloud from a storybook and turning the pages reminiscent of old Disney movies. He then promptly tears out a page and uses it for toilet paper. Subtle. And they just keep doing it too. And of course, everything seems to be just going great here in Swampland until a bunch of fairy tale creatures start appearing, including some we very much know, like the fairies from Sleeping Beauty, Snow White herself. Isn't she like one of the princesses from the mirror thing? Like, wouldn't it have just been a jillion times easier to go and save her? You just put her somewhere! And then of course there's also Tinkerbell and Pinocchio. All characters that were made extremely popular by Disney and now being used by the competition to sell tickets. And not only that, they're all being dumped in a swamp. Again, subtle. And it might seem like there's a certain amount of rule breaking going on here. Like, is that even legal? Can they use their characters? Here's the genius. Fairy tales are commonly used for Disney movies because nobody actually owns the characters. They've passed into public domain. He says without a total and full understanding of copyright law. I'm not a lawyer, don't quote me. Sure, Disney can protect its versions of its characters, but this Pinocchio isn't the same as this Pinocchio, and they're both based off of this original story, but this Pinocchio is totally benefiting from the popularity of this Pinocchio. I hope I pointed to all of the right Pinocchios at the right time. It becomes especially obvious when Shrek makes his way to Duloc to confront Lord Farquaad. First of all, Lord Farquaad has been compared in appearance to Michael Eisner, and I have to say I can kind of see the resemblance. I don't think it's any coincidence at all that Katzenberg had his main villain look this way or be this short when you remember the little midget comment.
Do you think maybe he's compensating for something?
Yes, Shrek, I do. Almost as if to say, who's short now? And even his name is kind of insulting, especially if you're not very good at pronouncing your R's. Plus there's the Kingdom of Duloc, which is just very clearly mocking Disneyland, all the way from the cued lines at the beginning to the costumed mascot. And to top it all off, the movie ends with like a really good message that is simultaneously super mocking Disney. Like, it's kind of a masterstroke. The movie is suggesting this idea that inner beauty is more important than outer beauty, and we get a nearly frame by frame shot of Fiona turning into a beast that basically perfectly matches Beast turning into a prince at the end of Beauty and the Beast. And all in the name of true love. Cut to Smash Mouth. Fun fact, the song All-Star at the beginning of the movie was really only put in there as a placeholder, but the test audiences loved it so much that it just kind of stuck. Guys, for my question of the day, what do you think? We, of course, here at SuperCarlinBrothers are huge Disney fans, but you gotta admit, Shrek does kind of knock it out of the park. Be sure to leave your thoughts in the towel section down below. Also, if you guys have not yet checked out our Patreon, you absolutely need to go specifically look at the $3 option, which grants you access to our Discord. It really really is just such an incredible community. There are so many cool people in there, and at this point, I don't even feel like we're really the highlight of it. Just everybody in there is always having so much fun, so much conversation. Be sure to go check it out. Guys, as always, thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you'd like to see some more Disney drama action from us, you can click right here to see the full story behind Ants in a Bug's Life, or right here to see why The Emperor's New Groove is just the most underrated Disney movie. But Jay, that's all I've got for you today, man. I will see you on Tuesday.